Nieuwenburg.
Well, let me 1 second here. Sorry, folks. Little minor mishap here. All right, we are live. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to episode 588 of Dream Business Radio. I'm your host, Captain Jim Palmer, the Dream Business Coach, coming today from sunny Georgia. Stephanie and I are beginning, as you can see, our travel and our rolling home. And anyway, I've launched this podcast 12 years ago, actually almost 13 years ago, to help you build your dream business so you too can live your dream lifestyle. My special guest today is John. Help me with your last name. That's a whopper of a lot of consonants.
Yeah, there is. It's Nieuwenburg. It's simple, but when you see it printed, it looks, it looks complicated. But it's John
Nieuwenburg.
Nieuwenburg. Yes.
All right, I can handle that. Okay, my special
So,
guest this week is John Nieuwenburg, and John, I'm excited to talk to you today, a fellow coach, and hear about your coaching program. And
pleasure.
so, folks, this episode of Dream Business Radio is brought to you by the Dream Business Mastermind and Coaching Program. It is the place to be if you want to create multiple streams of revenue, if you want to learn how to create amazing brands, how to charge what you're worth so you too can work just 3 days a week. You want to be part of this extraordinary program led by me, Captain Jim Palmer. 2024, by the way, this is my last year running the mastermind before I retire and not sail off, but cruise off now into some great places. You can find more at dreambizcoaching.com. That's the website for that. Or you can always reach out to me at getjimpalmer.com. And at the end of today's show, I will tell you how you can get free copies of all of my books. All right, let me properly introduce John, and we'll jump right in here. John Nieuwenburg is a professional business coach since 2004. He's worked with over 250 clients, taking them through a systematic approach that helps them feel organized, confident, and in control of their businesses. And who doesn't want that? Although John was trained and certified by an international certification body, he doesn't believe that certification is the best way to determine the quality of a coach. Results are. I completely agree there. John's clients report increased profits, smoother day-to-day operations, and the ability to take a well-earned vacation. Absolutely, without worrying that everything will fall apart in their absence. In 2019, McKay CEO Forums awarded John with Canada's CEO Trusted Advisor Award in the small business category. So obviously knows what he's doing. John, again, welcome to Dream Business Radio, my friend.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that grand introduction.
It's a lot to live up to, believe me. Let's say you do. So you've had a pretty long and storied career even before you became a coach. Tell us a little bit about, some of the highs and lows and some of the positions you had before you became an entrepreneur and started coaching others.
Well, before coaching, I was president of something called the BC Liquor Stores. And to give you a sense of the place, it's $3 billion in sales today and 200 locations and 4,000 team members. And started business life as a retailer in a national menswear retail store. Started as a sales guy. 17 years, lived in 10 places in Canada. Ultimately, I was living in Toronto, executive head office. And after 5 years of that, I decided I preferred the West Coast. So I got myself headhunted and came back to Vancouver.
So you started coaching. Is that when you became an entrepreneur? Did you become an entrepreneur and then coach, or did you start being a coach right off the bat?
I started as a coach. Yeah. So I lived corporate life up until then. And largely entirely a corporate. What I was going to say is that when you're in retail, each retail outlet kind of is a standalone business under a larger umbrella. So it feels like you're entrepreneurial, but probably more accurately like intrapreneurial.
Yeah. I've got a lot of experience in there when you think you're running things, and then at the very last minute, somebody one step above you can change everything. That's when you know, well, I thought I was in charge. But anyway, so John, you created W5 Coaching, which is what I promoted for our interview. W5 Coaching. What exactly is W5 Coaching?
Well, I believe in the early 80s, I was taught something called the Socratic method of leadership. So Socrates had it the best way to help somebody is to help them figure it out for themselves. And you do that because you guide them through their thinking. And so the core 5 questions, of course, I'll start with who, what, when, where, why, a W. And so that's the underlying premise of W5.
So who, what, where, when, and how? And so is that the model you use when you help clients, or I mean, is that like a? Tell me what happens when you get a new client.
Well, so the first, few sessions, we're trying to benchmark. We're trying to establish what's working, what's not working. I work through a framework called the 5 Steps to Freedom, where you're starting and kind of where am I, how am I going to position myself in the market, right through to where you have time and money freedom. There's 22 silver bullets that are part of the tools that we help implement in a business. They all have a role in the 5 Steps to Freedom. And so the early days of coaching, the onboarding is to look at the 22 steps, get the entrepreneur to benchmark themselves, what's working, what's not working, what's relevant, not relevant, and then we adapt the framework to their set of circumstances.
John, you mentioned a minute ago 5 steps to freedom. What does that mean? I mean, there's financial freedom, there's time freedom, which is usually financial freedom usually precedes time freedom for most folks. But what's your feeling about 5 steps to freedom?
Well, step 4, prosperous, is when an owner is very successful, the business is successful, the owner's involved every day, and lots of owners like it that way. That's for a bunch of different reasons. But the 5th step is time and money freedom. And so you're free to spend your time as you wish, and you have the money to do that. And it could be because you want to go, get in your motorhome. It could be because you want to go to the beach. It could be because you want to sell the business or start a different business. The point is you have a choice. You have both the time and money to be able to make that choice.
Very cool. And some of your, I was looking at your website, your blog, and some other things preparing for the interview. And
Sure.
somewhere, and I think I actually read it, it said, when your business runs well, you get your life back. Talk about
Yeah.
that. Is that, so I'm, well, that's part one. The second part of the question is, clients come to us as coaches usually wanting something, one thing, maybe it's a couple things, but in reality, they need something else, even if they need something else to get theirs. Talk about having a business run well so they get their life back.
Well, what's the underlying purpose of a small business? And the answer I want to give you is a bit of counterintuitive, and it wouldn't apply if you've got 20, 50, $100 million businesses, lots more stakeholders, boards, that kind of thing. But for the kind of businesses I coach, $1 to $5 million, the ultimate purpose of that business is to give its owner the life they want.
Mm-hmm.
None of us were born to business, we were born to live. And yet, so many business owners get sort of caught up in a world where their business is driving, dictating to them how they're living their life. And so ultimately, what we want to do is what do you want out of life? And then how do we design, or what do you need the business to be able to do so that you can get that life? Um, I'll give
Is
you a
that
little.
John, excuse me, is that a new concept when you work with a new client? They say, hey, I need to get more revenue up, I need more client, whatever that is. Do you kind of put the brakes on and take them? Let's tell me about the life you want and then design that business, or when do you get into that?
Well, a little story about that when I learned a lesson. So I was working with a guy early in my coaching career, and we were doing a strategic plan. And after 3, 4 weeks, this particular client wasn't very engaged in the process. And ultimately, I kind of challenged him. Hey, what's going on for you, man? How come you're not doing
Mhm.
this? And he looked at me and said, I don't know why we're doing this. I can't make payroll tomorrow. And that's when I
Oh,
realized I was a doofus because
you're coaching on big goals and he's worried about making payroll.
yeah, so that's my point, is that in the early days of coaching, there's burning bushes. There is my, metaphor for it. I can't make payroll. I'm working 100 hours a week. There's
Hmm.
some pressing, almost crisis in the business, and so you got to get that out of the way, and that can take 6 weeks. It's sometimes 6 months, and it's only when the pressure is reduced or they're feeling like the original um, concern that they had is under control, that you can start to say, okay, well, now we've got some breathing room. We can start thinking more proactively. We can be a bit more strategic instead of just firefighting every day. And so I'm pretty open about that with clients nowadays. I tell them that story, and listen,
Hmm.
we got to work together to figure out where are we on that curve? Are we still firefighting here, or is it time to start looking at the bigger picture?
How many clients, certainly naming no names, but how many clients do you work with that feel they need a big plan, or they come to you really in reality needing a life preserver? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so the kind of clients I have aren't really focused on the big plan. That is so, kind of almost foreign to them. They're very tactical. They're very much, involved in the business every day. They're on tools lots of times themselves, and they're trying to get to a place where they can run the business without being on tools all the time. And that's a big part of. Um, One of the things I'd like to say is that all business coaching is personal coaching in disguise. And what I
Okay.
mean by that is often the thing that holds them back is their set of beliefs, their mindset, their lens with which they view the world. And so part of what we help them do is figure out how to get out of the day to day, every day on the tools to where they can see themselves being the captain of the enterprise and getting results through others. And uh, as you likely know yourself, lots of times small business owners aren't very good at delegation. They have a completely mixed up view of what delegation is.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever met a very successful business owner who said, if I knew what I'd have to go through to get here, I probably wouldn't have started. Is that your experience as well?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
But what happens, or one definition of entrepreneurship is they're the kind of people that could never hold a job, right? Because they always thought I can do it damn better than this guy, so I'm going to do it myself.
Yep.
And so they trade off one set of stresses for another, and they prefer that set of stresses where at least it's my set of choices, and I get to choose how I'm going to spend my time. But no matter no matter what, it's always going to be more difficult than you would have imagined it was going to be.
When you said something earlier that most or all business coaching is personal coaching, which I agree. What have you found out as far as and I guess if you work with people in the 1 to 5 millions, there's probably leadership involved, right? I mean, most business owners start with a skill, whether accountant, lawyer, landscape, whatever. But then as you grow your business, and you're doing everything, but then you build a team. Now you need to be a leader. How many people are ill prepared for that?
Every one of my clients.
Yeah.
So my clients are like you described. They're professional advisors, lawyers, accountants, health practitioners, doctors, that kind of thing. The other side of it is their trades or craftspeople, electricians, plumbers, general contractors. What they both have in common is they're skilled at their profession or their trade, not skilled at all in business, right? So it takes 7 years to become a lawyer and 5 years to be a red seal plumber or something like that. And they start off and they got a truck and now they got 5 trucks, and they discover that, oh my God, I know how to do plumbing, but what do I know about business? And that's
Mm.
sort of a rude awakening for them. And
Um,
so the
no,
personal coaching is both skills training, leadership, communication, delegation, that kind of thing. It's also about accountability, or holding people's feet to the fire, so to speak. And largely, it's also about mindset, or the lens with which we view the world. Um, a simple example of that is: have you ever asked one of your business owners what are the first few words that come to mind for them when you say the word salesperson? So I've
mm,
asked thousands of people that question. You might be surprised how many times people have very negative connotations about selling, and yet every business owner is in sales in some fashion or another. And if you hold a self-limiting belief to be true about selling, it's got to undermine your capabilities, your abilities. If you're saying, geez, I'm out here trying to sell, but I have this negative idea of what selling is, well, that's an example of personal coaching. What would your mindset, how would you have to think about selling so you could feel good and, if not great, about it?
so we talked about accountability. We've talked about, personal growth, leadership. What, in your experience, how much of a difference maker is confidence and mindset? Do you generally have to work with your clients in that regard? And I'm sure they don't come to you saying that, but
You
sometimes,
know,
lacking confidence and courage to take big steps is a reason they flounder.
yeah, that's a great point, Jim, you're making. No one will come to me and say, I need some help with my mindset. They're there because they can't get home for dinner. They can't hire good people. It's more immediate kinds of problems, but the things that that they need to develop and grow are often get the mindset right first, and then you can put the things into place that'll help you do that. Because there's something holding them back. Otherwise, why wouldn't they do it on their own? And sometimes it's skill, but often it's mindset. An example of that is, ask someone what the definition of money is. And often, the kind of people I work with are really, they're kind of like self-employed. They have a job in the business with their name on it, and they've never made mentally the mindset transition to being the owner, the operator of the enterprise. They're still, I'm an electrician. Well, no, you're actually the owner of an electrical business.
That's right.
To kind of oversimplify, but it's very much at the heart of how would you have to shift what you
Big leap,
think.
right? That's the big leap that needs to be made if they're going to experience exponential growth.
Yes, exactly right.
I remember trying to think exactly when it was, probably about 2008 or 9. I started growing and opening a few different online businesses that I couldn't run myself, even if my original mindset was I might as well just do it myself and keep the money. Nobody can do it as good or as fast or as cheap as I can, so I may as well do it myself. But I learned that even if I only choose to sleep 5 hours a night, I know it's not good. There's only so much time in the day, and that's when I started building. The largest team I had was about 14 or 15, VAs doing all kinds of things to support. And I was just kind of spearheading the top, obviously marketing and sales. And I was out speaking, writing books. So I kind of coined that high revenue generating activity, and everything else that I could hire out for, whether it was 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 an hour. Those were tasks that I would only be worth 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 an hour if I was choosing to do those.
Yeah.
Is that how you see that also? And do your clients need that kind of alignment?
So, Jim, in 2018, I made that leap you're describing. I set a goal for myself that required me to change my mindset. And one of the things that I decided at that time is there was only one thing I do in my business that I'm the best at that nobody else can do as good as me, and that's talking to clients or prospects.
That's right.
Now, others are as good at coaching and perhaps even better. But in my business, the only thing I do that no one can do as good as me is talk to clients or prospects. And then what that meant is that's the only thing I do. Literally everything else has to be done by somebody else. So a VA, the bookkeeping, I have a marketing colleague on retainer, and that person has 12 or 14 people on freelance basis to do all the things that it takes. And that started, I had the skills, but I had to make the shift in mindset that we call it the skill fun box, right? You've got a 2x2, a 4-box axis. One side is skill and the other side is fun, and upper right is all the stuff you do that's really valuable, and all the bottom left is all the stuff that someone else will do better than you, and they'll do it for like $15 an hour, and you'll get a result from them than if you left it to your own devices.
For so many years, as I started building the team, I kind of laid myself a recovering control freak, because even though I had the team, I'm like, show me the email before you send it out, or do this. Or I wanted to, and then I got comfortable with the fact that, so if anybody's struggling, needs a little hint here, I got comfortable with the fact that if I could train somebody and they could do it about 80%, I just use the 80-20 rule here. If they could do it 80% as good as me, and I can focus on here, that loss of 20% is nothing compared to what I can do if I keep building my different businesses, right? So that's how I got comfortable with that. And the other thing I did, which was kind of the second leap, is when I had a team that big, and initially I'm overseeing everybody, then I got a project manager to oversee the team. So I didn't have to reach out to the writers. The project manager did. And the project manager made sure the writers were getting their copy for the newsletters, the templates were being designed. And she said, what do you want to use for software? I don't know. You pick something. Just tell me what it is. I'll give you my credit card. And she set up this whole system. So I just got feedback from one person instead of suddenly dealing with this whole team, which that's when things really started taking off for me. But it really did start with being comfortable letting go.
So I have the same kind of setup. I have in my case, it's a marketing colleague who I'm a retainer, and that person drives the marketing activity. But one of the things I'd say about delegation is I first hired a VA in 2018, and that VA, knowing me as her name, gave me a gift. And that gift was we had a meeting on Zoom, recorded. She detailed what we were talking about, and within 30 minutes of the call, she sent me the SOP. And it was a gift to me because I realized, wow, I shouldn't be the one writing the SOPs. The incumbent, the person who's going to do the work, ought to do the SOP because it's her way of confirming I understand what needs to be done. It forms kind of a contract. And now, every time I need something done, hey, do task 7 in this circumstance. And we both clearly understand what's involved in that. And so when you're using SOPs, you're not worried, is the person going to do it the right way? They're going to do it the right way because they're going to follow the process they designed, or at least they wrote.
I had a client years ago. This will be a similar story, which I think will be helpful for the people watching and listening. And he was in the, what we'll call it the SEO business, but he did SEO, John. He did Facebook ads, Google ads, he did everything to do with online marketing. He was very much a kind of an online genius, but he did it all. And people would be enthralled with what he did. And they'd say, I want everything. I want to grow my email list. I want this. And he'd get all excited and say, Jim, I got to create this request for RFP, request for proposal. And he'd put all this work into it. And you know what happens then, just like ad agencies, well, they ponder it, they get 5 more, and meanwhile, you've wasted 2 hours of your time, right? So we worked on some different ways to work around that. But the one thing I helped him realize was that in this 1 or 2 hour RFP that you prepared, not once, but many times for different clients, 70-80% of it is what I'll call boilerplate, right? So I said, there's a strategy called the mule and the magician. So a mule can just get work done all day long, never tire out, right? It's a very strong. And then the farmer or whoever else can put their magic touch on it. So I said, I'm going to call him Dave. His name's not Dave. I said, Dave, train somebody that when a request for proposal comes in, you find out what their company needs, or you can tell them because you had the conversation, and they start pulling all the boilerplate possible scenarios. He pulls it all together, and then he gives it to you. After he spent an hour on it, you spend 10 minutes, go fix this, and change this. That's mule versus magician, right? Yeah. So I don't know if you've ever heard that before.
Yeah, in the language of the E-Myth, their proposition would be about 85% of what happens in a business ought to be routine, mule work, to use your. And about 15% of the business is an exception, right? That something extraordinary, different. And so that's what you're describing. About 85% of what happened in a proposal in this example, we ought to be able to pull out the boilerplate because it's not so much a cookie cutter, but that's what we do. We produce, I hate to say it, but it's
we don't reinvent the wheel for every client. I mean,
well, if you are, you don't have a very successful or profitable business.
That's right.
You can't scale that business.
Absolutely. So we got about 5 minutes left, John, and we're talking about leadership and teams. So I think I want to stay there. I like this topic a lot. What are some of the best ways to grow a team the right way, and perhaps share a couple of mistakes to avoid, if you want to be successful as a team leader?
So one of the things that I see, especially nowadays, is that relatively speaking, getting customers is easier than it is to get good workers. And so we put a lot of effort, businesses put a lot of effort into getting new customers. But when it comes to recruiting, most business owners kind of do it off the side of their desk and only when there's an emergency. And so as a result, they're always panicked. Someone quit. I don't have a replacement. And I learned a lesson, which I'll share here. In about 72 or 73, I was the manager of a small menswear store. I was living in Calgary. Calgary grew from about 100 to 500,000 in the oil boom. Nobody was moving to Calgary to go into the retail trade. So one of the practices we had is my boss would visit me from time to time, but once a quarter, I had to go through them all with him and point out the two best salespeople who weren't yet working for me. So what?
Oh,
So my point here is, why not, as a business owner, identify the 3, 4, 5 key roles that you've got and develop a bench? And what does a bench mean? Well, what it means is, who's the 3, 4, 5 people in your industry that you'd like to have working with you? Have them for coffee, meet them for lunch, see them at the trade shows. Start to develop relationships with people so that if circumstances are you need a new person, you've got 5 phone calls you can make. And you're going to say, well, that's a lot of work. Well, man, oh man, it's a lot of work getting customers, and you put a lot of effort into that, and very little into getting the right person. And if you got the right person, so much of your life would be so much easier. So it's worth the effort. And so that's the first thing, is how do we think about recruiting so that it becomes mission critical. It's one of the most important things we do, not something we do when we're in a crisis, when we're in an emergency.
I've got one time for one more question. I was researching your blog, so I'll put you on the spot a little bit. Hopefully you can get this. You had a blog post called Quick Wins, 3 Easy Habits to Shortcut Your Way to Success. I don't know if you remember that. Can you share 1 or 2, or if you remember all 3?
Well, the ones that come to mind for me right now is, the best people in the world are best at naming or identifying or knowing what their priorities, their big to-dos are, and then to match their time. So they're using their time in proportion to your priorities. Or you show me your calendar, I'll show you your real priorities, despite what you may have told me. So the primary thing that sets apart people from the people that succeed is they know how to set their priorities, and they allocate their time in a proportion to that. And then related to that is the question of, what does focus mean? So if you have 150 priorities, how many priorities do you really have? You don't have any. That's the hard thing to figure out. And so the hard thing then to do is what Steve Jobs said, is focus is saying no to 1,000 good ideas, and to say yes to maybe 3 of the most important things, so that you can move the needle on those things. And that's what's going to, if the rest of the 127 things stay in maintenance mode, it's okay. It won't kill you, won't bury you. But if you move the needle on these 3 things, that's what's going to most make a difference in the results that you're getting. So that's the first few things that came to mind. I don't know if that's from the blog post, but
I'd say you knocked it out of the park.
Awesome. Okay.
I really like our conversation on leadership and kind of mindset and things like that. I kind of never know where the interviews are going to go, but I think it's very, very helpful for a lot of people. And thank you, Peg, for all your nice comments. John, how can people connect with you if they want to learn more and check out your blog like I did?
Well, it's easy to find, W5 Coaching, and it's John at W5 Coaching, and I'm on all of the social platforms, W5 Coaching. So I'm easy to find. W5, who, what, when, where, why.
W5coaching.com. It's a good URL because it's pretty hard to misspell any of that. If you had your name and as .com, that you'd be in trouble. People wouldn't be finding it. But W5 Coaching is good.
Yeah, one of the key things is, if you're going to have a URL, why not have your business, or at least that the average person can understand what the business does, right in the URL. That's the first fundamental step of the foundation of a business.
Absolutely. John, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks for the conversation. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Hey, folks, that wraps up this very special interview with John Nieuwenburg, W5coaching.com. Pretty easy there. So that's where you connect with him, and you can connect with me at getjimpalmer.com if you're interested in joining me and about 24 other very smart entrepreneurs in the Dream Business Mastermind and Coaching Program for this last year. You can go to dreambizcoaching.com. This interview and all other previous lives we've been doing now for about 2 years now live on in their infamy in my Dream Business YouTube channel. Oh, I remember I was going to tell you about my books. You can get free copies of all 6 of my books at Amazon, obviously as Kindle. They're Nook books at Barnes & Noble. They are also in the iBook store. You can download them for free, no opt-in required. Get a great education on Captain Jim. I'll be back next week with another fantastic interview. Until then, you take good care.